Welcome back to the Financial Chronicles channel. Imagine, for a moment, the sheer weight of a nation. Not the weight of its people or its land, but the physical weight of its wealth. Madrid, September 1936. The air is thick with the smell of gunpowder and fear. The Spanish Civil War is raging, and the fascist troops of General Franco are closing in on the capital. The ground shakes with artillery fire, but deep beneath the city, in the bowels of the Banco de España, there is a silence, a terrifying silence. Here lies the fourth largest gold reserve in the world, 700 tons of fine gold, coins, bullion, decades of trade, conquest, and empire, all stacked in cold, dark vaults. At today's market value, we are talking about billions upon billions of dollars sitting there, waiting. But in war, gold is not just wealth. It is a target. The Republican government is panicking. If Franco takes Madrid, he takes the gold. If he takes the gold, he wins the war. It is that simple. And so, a decision is made. A decision that will become one of the greatest financial mysteries of the 20th century. The order comes from the Minister of Finance, Juan Negrín. It is top secret. Even the President of the Republic doesn't know the full details. The order is simple, yet devastating. Move it all. Can you imagine the logistics? This isn't a bank robbery with a getaway car. This is an operation to move 510 tons of heavy metal under the cover of darkness. The vaults are opened. The sound of heavy boots echoes on the marble floors. Men, sweating, nervous, working by dim light, begin to pack the gold. They don't have proper secure containers. They use wooden ammunition crates. They use whatever they can find. 7,800 boxes. Each box is a piece of the nation's soul. The workers are told this is for safety. They are told the gold is going to a secure location within Spain, perhaps to the coast, to keep it away from the fascists. But lies are the first currency of war. As the trucks are loaded, the suspension springs groan under the impossible weight. The convoy moves out, creeping through the night like a funeral procession. They are heading for the train station. The destination? Cartagena, a port city, the last stronghold. But why Cartagena? Because in Cartagena, the ships are waiting. And these ships do not fly the Spanish flag. This is where the story shifts from a war drama to a financial thriller. The government has decided that no place in Spain is safe. They need a custodian, a banker, someone powerful enough to hold the gold. They look to the democracies of the West, France, Britain, but the West is paralyzed by the fear of Hitler. They refuse to intervene. They refuse to touch the Spanish gold for fear of being dragged into the war. So, Spain turns east, to the Soviet Union, to Joseph Stalin. It is a deal made with the devil, signed in blood and desperation. The plan is to ship the majority of the reserves to Moscow for safekeeping. For safekeeping. Let that word sink in. As the train chugs away from Madrid, carrying the wealth of an empire, nobody on board realizes that they are witnessing a funeral. They're watching the gold leave, and they believe, truly believe, that one day it will return. But history has a cruel sense of humor. The trucks arrive at the docks in Cartagena. The chaos is absolute. German and Italian planes are bombing the coast. Submarines are prowling the Mediterranean waters, hunting for Republican ships. And amidst this inferno, the gold sits on the dock, vulnerable, exposed. It is the middle of October. The Soviet ships, the kind the Kursk, the Neva, and the Volgiles, are docked. Soviet agents from the NKVD, the secret police, are watching every move. Their eyes are cold. They are not there to help Spain. They are there to secure an asset for the Kremlin. The loading begins. It takes 3 nights. 3 nights of backbreaking labor. 3 nights of terror that a stray bomb could blow the nation's future into the bottom of the sea. Alexander Orlov, the chief of the NKVD in Spain, sends a coded telegram to Moscow. The message is short. It sends a shiver down the spine of history. It says simply, arrangements complete. We are ready to sail. The gold is on the water. The Mediterranean Sea is a graveyard of empires, and now it threatens to swallow the Spanish fortune. For Soviet ships, heavy in the water, sitting low, dangerously low, they are carrying 72% of Spain's total gold reserves, 510 tons. The captains have been given sealed orders. They are not to open them until they are on the high seas. If they are intercepted by the enemy, Buy Franco's cruisers or Italian submarines. The orders are chillingly specific. Sink the ship. Better to send the gold to the bottom of the ocean than let it fall into fascist hands. Can you imagine the tension on the bridge of the Kursk? The captain scanning the horizon, looking for the periscope of a submarine, knowing that beneath his feet lies enough wealth to buy a small country or destroy one. For days, there is radio silence. The Spanish government waits. The Soviet handlers wait. The world remains oblivious. This is the greatest heist in history, disguised as a bank transfer. While the ships navigate the treacherous waters, back in Moscow, the excitement is palpable. Joseph Stalin is pacing in his office in the Kremlin. He knows what is coming. He is not thinking about saving the Spanish Republic. He is not thinking about the fight against fascism. He is thinking about liquidity. The Soviet Union needs hard currency to industrialize. They need tractors. They need tanks. They need technology. And suddenly, fate has delivered a golden goose right to their doorstep. The ships finally arrive, not in a major European banking hub, but in Odessa, a Soviet port on the Black Sea. It is November 1936. The winter chill is setting in. The docks are cleared. The NKVD takes over. Special regiments of troops surround the harbor. No weaknesses. No leaks. The crates are unloaded. One by one, they are loaded onto a special armored train. The destination, Moscow, the state depository for precious metals. The journey from Odessa to Moscow is long, and it marks the transition of the gold from Spanish property to Soviet possession. With every mile the train travels north, the chances of Spain ever seeing that gold again drop to zero. When the gold arrives in Moscow, the counting begins. This is not a quick process. We're talking about millions of coins, British sovereigns, American eagles, French francs, and, most valuable of all, rare numismatic coins from centuries past, coins that are worth far more than their weight in gold. The Spaniards have sent 4 officials to oversee the counting. For men, against the entire Soviet machine. They are locked in a repository, day after day, checking lists, weighing bars. The Soviets are meticulous. They reweigh everything. They claim the Spanish scales were wrong. They claim the crates were lighter than declared. It is a psychological game. The Spanish officials are isolated. They are in a foreign land, freezing, tired, and slowly realizing the magnitude of what has happened. They are not guests. They are hostages of the situation. Meanwhile, at a banquet in the Kremlin, Stalin is celebrating. According to the memoirs of a Soviet official present at the time, Stalin raised a glass of vodka. He smiled, that cryptic, terrifying smile, and he said to his inner circle, "The Spaniards will never see their gold again, just as they do not see their own ears." Their own ears. It was a statement of absolute theft, a declaration of possession. But on paper? Oh, on paper, everything was legal. The Soviet Union opened a commercial account for the Spanish Republic. They credited the value of the gold. They promised to use it to buy weapons, fuel, and supplies for the Spanish war effort. And here lies the genius of the trap. The Soviets became the sole supplier of the Spanish Republic. They set the prices. They decided the exchange rates. They decided how much a tank was worth, how much a rifle cost, and they deducted it directly from the gold account. It was a monopoly, a captive market. Spain was bleeding and paying the doctor with its own blood. The prices were inflated. The exchange rates were manipulated. The Soviets charged transport fees, handling fees, administrative fees. They were draining the account deliberately, systematically. The Spanish officials in Moscow, watching the gold being cataloged, began to see the numbers on the ledger drop. They sent frantic messages back to Madrid. The costs are too high. The exchange rate is unfair. But what could Madrid do? They were fighting for their lives. They had no other friends. They had to accept the robbery because the alternative was annihilation. By 1938, the ledger was looking dangerously empty. The vault in Moscow is cold, but the ledger books are burning hot. As the Spanish Civil War grinds on, the gold reserves are being incinerated, not by fire, but by accounting. The Soviet Union charges Spain for every bullet, every crate of canned food, every pilot sent to fly the planes. They even charge for the salaries of the Soviet advisors who are, supposedly, there to help. It is the ultimate company store scenario. You work for the company, you buy from the company, and you owe your soul to the company. Let's look at the numbers. They are staggering. The Soviets manipulated the exchange rate between the Spanish peseta, the French franc, and the US dollar to ensure that the gold was undervalued when it arrived, and the weapons were overvalued when they were sold. Historians estimate that the Soviets inflated the price of military aid by 30, maybe 40%. And the quality? Much of the equipment sent to Spain was old, obsolete, rifles from the First World War, tanks that broke down. But Spain was charged premium prices. They were paying for Ferraris and receiving rusted bicycles. Back in Spain, the republic is collapsing. The economy is in hyperinflation. Why? Because the currency, the peseta, has no backing. The gold is gone. When a nation loses its gold reserve, its money becomes paper. Just paper. Confidence evaporates. Prices skyrocket. People starve. The Moscow gold was supposed to be a safety net. Instead, it became a noose. By 1939, the war is lost. Franco enters Madrid. The republic falls. And what did the account in Moscow? In the final days of the war, the Soviet government presented the Spanish representatives with a final bill, a final statement. It showed that the entire value of the gold, all 510 tons, all 7,000 crates, had been spent. In fact, the Soviets claimed that Spain owed them money, specifically $50 million. Can you believe the audacity? They took the fourth largest gold reserve in the world and claimed it wasn't enough to cover the bill for a few years of outdated weapons. The Spanish officials were forced to sign the papers. They signed the receipts. They validated the theft. What choice did they have? They were exiles now, refugees. If they didn't sign, they might disappear into the gulag. So they signed, and with the stroke of a pen, the gold was legally, officially gone. The paperwork was filed away in the deepest archives of the NKVD. The gold itself? It was melted down. The beautiful, historic coins, the sovereigns, the ancient doubloons, they were tossed into the smelters. The history was erased. They were turned into generic Soviet bars, stamped with a hammer and sickle, and sold on the international market to buy American machinery and German technology. The Spanish gold literally built the Soviet industrial machine that would later fight in World War II. For decades, this remained a secret, a rumor. Franco, the dictator of Spain, knew the gold was gone, but he didn't know the details. He railed against the Republican thieves and the Soviet looters. It became a propaganda tool. The Reds stole our gold. He would scream from the balcony, but he couldn't get it back. The Soviet Union denied everything. They simply said, "We have no gold belonging to Spain." The account was closed. Here are the receipts. Diplomatically, it was a dead end, a stone wall. But the ghost of the gold continued to haunt Spain. It wasn't just about the money. It was about national dignity. It was about the theft of a legacy. Imagine the sweat of generations of Spaniards, the explorers, the miners, the traders, all that effort vanished, vaporized into the gray skies of Moscow. And the tragic irony? Some of the Republican leaders who authorized the transfer, who trusted the Soviets, ended up in exile in the Soviet Union. And many of them were purged, executed, imprisoned. They gave Stalin their gold, and he took their lives as interest. This is the brutal reality of state-level finance. There are no friends. There are only interests. When you hand over the keys to the vault, you're no longer a partner. You are a beggar. But the story doesn't end in 1939. Gold has a way of resurfacing, or at least, the memory of it does. Fast forward, the 1950s. The Cold War is freezing the world. Spain is isolated, poor, struggling to rebuild. The memory of the vanished gold is a scar on the national psyche. It is the lost inheritance. The Spanish government, under Franco, tries to use legal channels. They hire international lawyers. They scour the archives. They try to find a loophole, a way to prove that the transfer was illegal, that the receipts were coerced. But international law is a tricky beast. Possession, as they say, is 9/10 of the law, and the Soviet Union had 10/10 of the possession. Then, in 1956, something happens. Juan Negrín, the man who signed the order, the man who sent the gold to Moscow, is dying in Paris. He's an old man now, broken, exiled, hated by Francoists, and distrusted by his own Republican comrades. But on his deathbed, he does something unexpected. He hands over the dossier, the original documents, the receipts, the telegrams, the proof of ownership. He gives them to the Franco government. Think about that. He hands the evidence to his mortal enemy. Why? Because he was a Spaniard first. He realized that the gold belonged to Spain, not to a political party. He wanted the nation to have a chance, however slim, to reclaim its wealth. It was a final act of patriotism from a dying man. The documents proved the massive accounting fraud. They proved the inflated prices. They proved that the Soviets had skimmed millions off the top. But did it matter? When the Spanish diplomats waved these papers in front of the Kremlin, the Soviets just shrugged. Nikita Khrushchev, then the leader, reportedly laughed. That is ancient history, they said. The account is closed. The gold was gone. Physically gone. It had been spent. Dispersed. It was now in the vaults of banks in London, Zurich, New York, bought by unsuspecting traders. The atoms of the Spanish gold were scattered across the globe. But the lesson remains, and it is a lesson that resonates even today. Look at the modern world. Look at Venezuela. Recently, Venezuela tried to repatriate, to bring back, its gold stored in the Bank of England. More than $1 billion worth. The Bank of England said, no. They questioned the legitimacy of the government. They froze the assets. It is the same story. Different century, same principle. If you do not hold your gold, you do not own your gold. Sovereignty is physical. It is not digital. It is not a contract. It is control. The Moscow gold incident taught the world a terrifying lesson about counterparty risk. When a nation collapses, when chaos reigns, the first thing to vanish is trust. The second thing to vanish is the collateral. The Spanish people paid a heavy price for that lesson. For decades, the Spanish economy lagged behind Europe. The lack of reserves made the currency weak. It made import impossible. It delayed the recovery by 20 years. The poverty of the post-war years in Spain, the rationing, the hunger was directly linked to those empty vaults. Every time a Spanish mother struggled to buy bread in Madrid in 1945, it was because a bureaucrat in Moscow had stamped a paper in 1937. The butterfly effect of finance. The receipts that Negrín handed over, they are now in the archives of the Bank of Spain. Yellowed, brittle, meaningless as currency, but priceless as a warning. They sit there as a monument to the greatest vanishing act in financial history. So what is the conclusion? What do we learn from the empty vaults of Madrid? We live in a world of digital finance. Bitcoin, stocks, bonds, numbers on a screen. We feel safe because we see the numbers. We log into our accounts and we see the balance. But the story of the Moscow gold reminds us of the fragility of custody. When the crisis hits, when the tanks roll, or when the servers crash, who actually hold the asset? If there is a breakdown in the international order, contracts become confetti. The only law that matters is the law of the vault. Who has the key? Who has the gun standing in front of the door? Spain trusted a foreign power because they were desperate. They thought ideology, shared political beliefs, would protect their wealth. They thought communist brotherhood was a guarantee. But money has no ideology. Gold has no politics. It only has weight. And it tends to slide towards those who are strongest. The vanishing of the Spanish gold is not just a historical anecdote. It is a cautionary tale for every modern nation and every individual investor. It asks us, do you trust the custodian? Do you trust the bank? Do you trust the system? Because in 1936, the Spanish government trusted. And overnight, the wealth of an empire accumulated over 400 years turned into smoke. Stalin's quote echoes through time. They will see it as they see their own ears. He was right. They never saw it again. Today, the Bank of Spain has rebuilt its reserves. The vaults are no longer empty. But the ghost of the Moscow gold still lingers in the corridors. It serves as a silent guardian, a reminder to every governor of the bank, to every minister of finance. It whispers a simple, brutal truth. Keep your friends close. Keep your enemies closer. But keep your gold right where you can see it. Because when the lights go out and the world goes dark, possession is the only law that remains. The ships that sailed from Cartagena carried more than metal. They carried the illusion of safety. And when they docked in Odessa, that illusion was shattered. So, the next time you look at a gold coin or a number in your bank account, ask yourself, if the world changed overnight, would this still be mine? Or would it vanish like the fog over the port of Cartagena, leaving nothing behind but a receipt and a memory? Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of history's greatest financial mysteries. This is the Financial Chronicles. If you found value in this deep dive, please subscribe and share this story. History is the best teacher, but only if we listen to the lesson. Until next time.